to the service this morning. It's again good to be gathered and to fellowship, to worship, to praise the Lord. Thank you for the encouragement, Brother Abe, and just sharing on that need. It's an ongoing need as well. And so we are aware of that, and thank you for just sharpening us in that. So many of you have asked if we would share some pictures and a presentation on our trip to Israel. So this morning we plan to do that, and we pooled all our pictures and reduced them from a multitude to 95. So that's the amount of pictures that will be shown. So I'm going to do a bit of a running commentary through them on our trip. And then at the end, with the last 10 pictures, we're going to have, first we're going to have Julius and Aganitha and their children come up, and they're all going to share a little bit, a blurb on what was outstanding for them. And then Herman and Helen will come up with a couple pictures and do their thing, and then Sadie and then myself as well. And so so unfortunately, Mrs. Nudorf had to be away today. She could not be here. She would as well participate. So just a thought on Israel. It's a privilege. It's a privilege to be in a country that has more history than any other country in the world. Hands down. There's more archaeological evidence and backup than any other country has. And it's when you're there and you see the archaeological sites, it's astounding. And how they back up Scripture. And the Jewish people were there. Before Jesus, they were there in all the different sites. And so it's a privilege to be able to tour a country like that. Now, I know the world, and even in Christianity, is somewhat dividing on this subject of Israel and the Jewish people. And so what we saw firsthand just firmed up, at least in my heart, that God is with this people. And just like He chose Abraham and said, I will make you a blessing, and the whole world will be blessed through you. In the same manner, He has prophesied throughout Scripture that all of the end time events will fall out in the land of Israel, and more specifically, much of it in Jerusalem. Now, is it because the Jews are a better people? No. Is it because God loves them more than He loves you? No. Why then? Because God said so. He chose and ordained it. This is how it's going to play out. Secondly, God desires more than anything that the Jewish people will recognize Jesus Christ as Messiah. Remember on Mount Sinai when the law was given and God met them on the mountain and the people said, "Whoa, Moses, you go talk to him. We can't bear it." Moses went up. And then later Moses in Deuteronomy said, God will send a prophet like me, him you shall hear. Deuteronomy 15, I think, verse 16. Him you shall hear, a reference, a prophecy to Jesus Christ. When he comes, him you shall listen to. You rejected the voice of God on Mount Sinai. When Jesus comes, him you shall hear. What happened when Jesus came? They killed him. They said, you will not be my Messiah. I'm talking in general terms because there were Jews that were believers, Messianic Jews today even. But as we speak, by far the majority of the Jewish nation, the Jewish people around the globe, including Israel, do not believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. And God is waiting for the day when he can show them, this is my Son. In him you shall believe. And Scripture says at his second coming, the Jewish people that survive the tribulation period will recognize him as God. And so hence, God has his reasons. Why? And so we were privileged to see God's protection over a disobedient people today, but for his own purposes. So with that, we're going to start showing. We have a video first. If you want to get the lights as well, John. No matter where I stand, I'll be blocking someone, right? That video was taken out of our motel room, or out of our motel. A lady there, instead of being obedient and going down to the bomb shelter, stayed up and videoed it. But those are the noises that we heard for the last couple of days we were there, as Israel was under attack from Iran. That's very real life for that people group. And I just thought of a quote by Golda Meir, who was a prime minister of Israel from the year 1969 to 74, I believe. And she said, she quoted very wisely, that until the Arab nations love their children more than they hate us, we will have conflict. Should I say that again? She quoted that until the Arab nations love their children more than they hate us, there will be conflict. And it's going right back to Isaac and Ishmael. And so, but that's a little background there. All right, so this is a very small map of Israel. As we go and tour this, we landed here in Tel Aviv, and then we proceeded to go up to Mount Carmel, over to the Sea of Galilee. We toured this region, Golan Heights, back to the Sea of Galilee, and then down the Jordan to Jerusalem. And that's when the war broke out, on day 6, when we were in Jerusalem, the war broke out. And we stayed there for a few days, just hung out. And then they looked for a way to get us out of Israel, and they took us down the Dead Sea, and we traveled all the way down to Eilat, which is the furthest southern tip of Israel. And we have Jordan, Israel, Egypt, and underneath Saudi Arabia. And so we went to Eilat and then crossed into Egypt and then over to Cairo, and we flew out from there. So that's kind of the journey that we'll go. So let's go to the next picture. So guess where this is? It's a whale, but where this is? Nineveh. That's where he was going. Joppa. Joppa, which is the old part of Tel Aviv. It's the old part of the city, the original. So this is the site where they believed Jonah jumped into the ship and started his journey in escaping God's command. Next, we have a picture of the Mediterranean from that whale. And then in Joppa, if we can read that, it says, House of Simon the Tanner. Now what happened at the house of Simon the Tanner? The Apostle Peter was on the rooftop, sleeping in a trance, and God showed him a vision with the sheet, the blanket with the animals in there, and he said, arise, kill and eat. And Peter said, So we don't know that this is the actual house. It likely isn't. But they have in Joppa, by the sea, right in that area, they have a house called Simon the Tanner. And the next picture, so that's the door there. And so he would have been on the rooftop. And it wasn't uncommon for the Jewish people to have a dwelling on top of the roof and a place to relax or even to recline. So that's where he would have been. And that's where men were sent to Peter to come and preach the gospel to the Gentiles. So that's in Joppa, which is now grown into Tel Aviv. Next picture. There's an old church building also in Joppa, used by many denominations, right? You guys can help me if anybody remembers how many. There's quite a few groups that had church services in here. I think 4 or 5. Yeah. Next. And there's a young couple on the beach. And another one. And so from Joppa, we stayed night there in Tel Aviv. And then the next morning we traveled to Caesarea, which is down the coast towards Haifa, halfway. And Caesarea is the place where Herod had built a big palace. He spent a lot of time there. But it's also more well known for Paul's imprisonment for 2 years. When Paul was transferred from Jerusalem to Caesarea and kept in jail there because the Jews wanted to kill him. And here's a picture of the old water duct system that they had to bring in fresh water. It was raining, it was pouring rain that morning, so we missed seeing most of what we wanted to see in Caesarea, unfortunately. So from there, we traveled on further north. Next picture. Well, this was also in that region. So you see the plantations, the fruit plantations, a lot of different crops, olives and so on, dates. But these tarp buildings, we just have the edge of it. There was a lot of them. There's some in the background. Those actually house bananas, and they had all their banana plantations under tarp like that, to protect them, I guess. So that was interesting. Next. So from there, we traveled from Tel Aviv, and Gaza would have been, or no, Caesarea would have been there, and then we're now going to Mount Carmel, which is up there. And guess who's on that statue? Elijah, Mount Carmel, where he called down fire from heaven to show who is God. Well, that happened on this mount overlooking the Jezreel Valley as it moves toward the Jordan Valley, all connected. So next picture. And there you see it. It's beautiful. It's the whole valley, and the Jordan would be way in the background. And then it would just circle around and go south towards Jerusalem. So it's a whole huge fertile valley, very, very fertile, very intense agricultural farming, lots of orchards, even wheat crops and so on. And this is also the valley that Revelation says will be filled with blood with the battle of Armageddon. Up to the horses' bridles, it's talking about the Jezreel Valley, this stretch. So how literal that will turn out, we don't know, but that will be a lot of bloodshed in that Armageddon battle as Jesus returns. So next, we have on Mount Carmel, just some vegetation type. It's very beautiful. Next. And then as we left Mount Carmel, driving down the roadside, Julia snapped a picture of some graves. And our guide pointed out to us, so old burial sites, just kind of, just the remains of them. So you picture, even here, you have the round stone, and that maybe gives us an image of when Jesus was buried, and the stone was rolled in place. It may have been bigger in Jesus' time, but regardless, that's the picture of it. Okay, next picture. Here we have Mrs. Nudorf. Also, I think this was still on Mount Carmel. Picture of her there. She enjoyed the beauty. Okay, next picture. Okay, another picture of the valley from a different angle, and we can see the lushness of the valley. Most of the valley is, is drip irrigation. Israel is world-renowned for their irrigation systems. They have the leading technology in the world. And we also did see some sprinkler types. The pivot, in the north, we saw some pivot irrigation as well. But majority of it is drip style because it uses the least amount of water. So now where does Israel get its water from? Any guesses? The ocean. The Mediterranean Sea. The ocean. And they take the salt out, and that's their main water supply for much of Israel. Okay, next picture. So more of the Jordan Valley, so kind of a close-up picture. Not the Jordan, Jordan or Jezreel Valley. And by the way, our timing, they said it was the greenest time of year. And it's winter there, so it's the greenest time of year. Okay, so this is, I think, Megiddo, and there's a lot of history in Megiddo, which is just from Mount Carmel. You could see it, but it was a kind of a mount, a hill, and on top was a city back in the day, and the kings would defend, or even in Israel would defend the country from this position. as from anybody traveling from the north to conquer had to come past this, and as well from the south. And so it was a very pivotal point of defense. And the ruins, we don't have a lot of pictures here now, but the ruins were spectacular in showing even the pathway up into the city was so designed that no army could ingress without making a lot of effort and noise. And they could easily be defended. And up there, up on top in the city, they showed us ruins of where the stables have been and the horses, the king's horses and quarters and all of that stuff. So I'm not sure of the date of this. Anyone help me with that?
Which date?
Yeah, which eras this would have been?
They say 5,000 years, but I would just guess from the flood on.
Which is,
Because most people try to date it back 5,000 years.
right, which is close to 5,000 years, the flood and on. Yeah. Yeah. Interesting, this mount also showed layers of civilization and many earthquakes in this country. And so an earthquake would come and topple what was there, and they would rebuild on that. And then often a next era. So next picture. So then we traveled down to the Sea of Galilee. And the first place where we stopped was Magdala. It's also where we stayed the next 3 nights. Magdala, and the sea is in the background. We can't see it from here. The next picture. And we visited some ruins in Old Magdala, a church site that had been there. And we see here, this is a synagogue kind of dugout, reconstructed. And this would have been the platform, I'm not sure what the name would be, where they would rest the scroll on to read it in the synagogue. See the fancy artwork on the floor. All that uncovered from several thousand years ago. So next picture. Here's a close-up of that platform. Okay, next picture. And then we have a picture just overlooking the Sea of Galilee. So that's in the background there. It's a little bit fuzzy. From what location was this? Does anyone remember? Looks like we're up a little bit higher. Was it Capernaum? Okay. So then that means that we're now on the north end of the lake, Capernaum. That's correct, yeah. Okay, next picture. Here we have a beautiful family overlooking the sea. Sea of Galilee. So lots of Bible stories around the Sea of Galilee. Jesus spent a good chunk of his ministry there. Next. And what site was this again? Was this at Gerizim? So at Gerizim, which is one of the cursed places, Capernaum, Gerizim, and were cursed by Jesus, and all that's left is ruins today. But this was a picture, and you can't see it well, but of a public bathhouse, a Jewish bathhouse. And guess how many steps down into the bathhouse? 7. And that represented purity. 7 is the number of God, of holiness. And 7 steps down and into this bathhouse to get ritually cleaned. And generally these bathhouses were so rigged up that they actually had running water, a spring flowing through it. So they would be biblically, Old Testament style, cleansed and prepared for service for God. So they had dug this out, and the 7 steps were all visible going down as per Old Testament. So we found that interesting. So next picture. So here we're on the sea. We went for a short boat ride. They took us out on the water. We have we have a Canadian flag up there, but also the Israeli one. Next, there's a few of us sitting on the boat. Next picture. Oh, go back one. We have John's mom here, Mrs. Harms. She joined us from Ontario, and then Mrs. Nudorf and us. Next picture. And then we have the Clausens as well. And we have a group picture. This was our group that went. Most of these are from Manitoba. Two different groups from Manitoba that joined us. And up front is our Israeli tour guide. Her name is Vered, and she is a Messianic Jew, a believer in Jesus Christ. So she gave us the tour and the commentary as well. Okay, next picture. The picture of us, of the boat coming back in on the Sea of Galilee. And another picture. Now, we're on the water here. Magdala is here, and back in the hills here would be where Nazareth would be. And so this is the path past this mountain that Jesus would have gone from Nazareth to the Sea of Galilee. And so just in front of this big rock, and the highway is there now too. So that would be the pathway that he would have taken back in those days. So of course foot travel, things will have been different back then, but nonetheless that's the natural terrain that he would have followed. Okay, next picture. Okay, now we are where? Capernaum. Okay, and they had also dug out archaeological finds of a synagogue. And here, what's interesting is that there's a couple of different rock formations depicting different eras of civilization or of building of Jewish people. And so I don't know how many times they figured have been built on this site, the synagogue rebuilt, but I think at least 3. And so different style of rocks, different colors. It was very apparent when you were there in person, and you could actually see the different layers. Next. And so there's more of ruins that they've started to uncover. The same site in Capernaum. And of course, this is modern, kind of, a tourist attraction, but this is ancient. Yeah. And it's interesting, almost all the holy sites in Israel where there's key areas of ministry, those properties have been bought up by the Catholic Church, almost entirely. And they now have their buildings and their tourist attractions there as well. So very dominating in the critical sites. And I guess when Israel became a nation in 1948, they allowed the Catholic Church to do that. Possibly with some regrets today, but nonetheless. So next, it's a picture over the sea and a big cactus tree. Next. As we're driving close to the Sea of Galilee, this here is a roadside bomb shelter. And so these are fairly frequent, but you just stop and go down underground here when the sirens go off. So it's interesting that Israel is a land so prepped for danger that every hotel building, every public building has bomb shelters underneath. And the motel that we stayed at in Jerusalem had 2 stories down. Very, very thick concrete. We felt very safe there. But the whole country is geared that way. When they build, they think protection. I don't know of any other government in the world that takes such measures to protect their people. They go all the way. Okay, next. Okay, we're heading north now, towards the very northern tip of Israel, Caesarea Philippi, and from there, the next pictures we'll be able to see Syria, and as well as Lebanon. So next picture. So we're traveling up from the Sea of Galilee, up along the side of the Golan Heights, and then right up in there is where we're going to have the next pictures. Okay, so this is Caesarea Philippi, or Banias. This is the site where Jesus asks Peter, "Who do men say that I am?" And then Jesus asked further, "Who do you say I am?" And Jesus said, "Thou art the Son of the living God." And this happened at this site, Caesarea Philippi. And I'll explain a little bit the background here. So next picture. As we walked up to this ancient worship site, a pagan worship site. Next picture. And one more. So that's the top of it. So this area is called Banias. I don't know if I pronounced that right. But nonetheless, this is the area where Dan, the tribe of Dan, who had an inheritance closer in Judea, closer to Jerusalem. Later on, the tribe of Dan looked for another chunk of land. And they went to the very furthest north and conquered a people group there and joined in their harlotry, in their pagan worship. And so what they would do in their Baal worship, there was a big pit in here, full of water and rocks, and they would worship their gods there, and they would literally sacrifice humans and throw them alive into the pit. And how did it go again? You guys correct me. If the person they threw down wasn't killed in there, then they would have to throw a second one down? Wasn't? Oh, if he wasn't bleeding. Thank you for correcting me. So the tradition has it, as they worship Baal, and they would throw a person in, and if he wasn't smashed on the rocks before hitting the water and bleeding, they would say, the gods have not accepted this sacrifice, and they would sacrifice another human being. So Jesus, in this background, asked Peter, "Who do you say I am?" And Peter positively identified, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." And then what did Jesus reply? "Flesh and blood did not reveal that to me. And upon this confession, I will build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it." The gates of hell, and here portrayed as this pagan, the ugliest form of pagan worship, sacrificing human life. In that background, Jesus declared, "I will build my church." So that's very impactful when you're there and you visualize it. So next pictures. So from there, we went a little further north to Dan. And so this would be more specifically where named after the tribe of Dan, but it was only like 7 or 8 kilometers away from the previous site. And from here you can see Israel's outpost of protection on top of the Golan Heights. So next picture. This is looking into Syria from that same spot, just a little bit different angle. And next, and I think this was Lebanon. So it was all from that angle. There was, from that place that we looked in Dan, we could look into Syria and Lebanon, which both are under attack right now as well. Well, more so Lebanon. And in fact, the boundary is very zigzaggy. And from the place where we stood, our guide told us we are close enough to them, they can zero in and see us and what we're doing here from where we are standing on this viewpoint. So that was how close. So that really emphasized the need for Israel to control the Golan Heights so that they had protection from their neighbors so they couldn't snipe in. So next pictures. So this is also in Dan, and it's the seat of Moses. And we have a young Moses here. His name is Wyatt. But yeah, so the judgment seat of Moses. So going back to the children of Israel wandering days and depicting the judgment seat. Okay, I think this was the direction of Mount Hermon. One more photo, please. Yeah, go back one. So Mount Hermon is actually further up, and it's clouded over. We couldn't see it, but this is kind of the foothills of it, and it's the highest. While Mount Hermon has one side of it in Israel, but the other in Syria, and it's usually snow covered as well. And so we have some psalms referring to Mount Hermon. Okay, next picture. And here we have an olive tree. How old did they guess this one was? 400 years. Okay. At a previous trip in the Garden of Gethsemane, there was trees there they estimated that were 2,000 years old, and possibly could have been there when Jesus was there. So olive trees can go very old. Next picture. So we're in Nazareth now. And by the way, Nazareth, where Jesus grew up, is today largely an Arab town. And it's a city. And it's a high percentage, by far the majority, are Arabs living in Nazareth. And in the middle of that town, we have what we call a Jerusalem village. By YMCA has put this together. They purchased a property and displayed how life might have been like in the time of Jesus. And so we have a couple pictures in there. You want to go on? It was a synagogue, what Jesus would have experienced in Nazareth. Some hillside gardening with a little bit of water. Things grow there. And this is the mount in Nazareth. Remember in Luke 4, after Jesus took the scroll and said, "Today in your hearing, this prophecy is fulfilled before your eyes." And then he also said that no prophet is accepted in his own town. And then what did they do? They took him up on this precipice, and this is that. We went up there. And you overlook the whole Jordan or Jezreel Valley. But behind us, it's straight down. And so literally, if they would have pushed Jesus over, well, as a human, he would have been a goner. But he disappeared in the crowd. So that's our group picture. Next. And here we have Vered, our Israel guide, and John Plants, Friends of Israel from Winkler, Manitoba, our Canadian guide. So the two of them. So next picture. And then from there, we traveled to Gideon Springs. Remember the story of Gideon in the Bible? And where in the book of Judges, and where God said, you have too many people with you, let's get rid of some. And have them all go down to the water and drink water. And those that lapped or scooped. And so this is one of the guys that didn't want to go to war. So he didn't lap like a dog. The next picture. A very clear water. Some more. Next. Another picture there. So there's a series of springs there in that Gideon Springs Valley. And he's having a hard time. From there, we traveled to a place called Bet Shean, and it's the biggest archaeological site in Israel, but has the least amount of Israeli history there. And so this next picture, this picture is a public bathhouse, not bathroom, outhouse. And they imported marble for their seats. And they have literally a trough here full of water to wash your hands when you're done. And what you kind of do is straddle two, and you do your thing in between. And literally a public bath place where, and this was one row, there was a full side here yet too. I think even 3 sides. So there's like room for 80 people to go at once. And all of it covered with marble. Imported. Next. This is their amphitheater. It's not a full circle, but it would cover, 200 degrees or a little more, 250. And I went to the top. Our guide did a presentation, and you can hear from the top anywhere crystal clear. And it's a big area. It would seat several thousand people easy. And you could hear it crystal clear. The sound was just perfect. And it's all stone, and it's all dug out the way that they found it. So next. So this is also a knoll or a hill, also a place of defense. But this is the theater I just pointed out over here. So all of this is ruins of an ancient city, and our guide thought it was around the year 400 after Christ that this civilization would have lived. So Scripture is silent on this place, but there's the pillars over here, just so much there. Another picture. We have some machos that climb the hill. Next. Some of the artwork on their floors in the ruins. Just fantastic. Next. This is a public bathhouse. So not an outhouse, but a place to wash, to bathe. And you have all these stools in the middle to sit on. So it's even a little bigger than what's on the picture, but that's something they've all uncovered in this old city place. So running water in your individual homes would have been non-existent. So where do people go to bathe? The public bathhouse. Where do they go do their washroom business in the city? To the public one. Next. So another angle of that same ruins. We'll keep going. And then we arrived, went down the Jordan. We're heading towards Jerusalem. And just before Jericho, we come to a place called Gilgal. And Gilgal is where the children of Israel crossed the Jordan, where God stopped the Jordan, 2 walls of water. They crossed at Gilgal, and what did they do? They took 12 stones and made an altar. So our guide had us stop by the roadside, side road. We stopped. We gathered 12 stones, and we made our own little altar by Gilgal. Next. And then we are in the city of Jerusalem, and one section of the old city wall, the old city. A very modern city, though. Next. So this is now the hotel that we stayed for several days because of the war. Part of the dining room. I think they could feed probably several hundred people at once. And everything there is buffet because they go through so many tourists, hundreds daily, so they all have everything buffet. Next. So this is down in a corner of the bomb shelter. Somebody has served pizza there. And next. Again, just having some food. Next. So just different sections of it. So we spent a fair amount of time in and out from, so this was 2 stories under the ground. Okay, next. And then, after 2 days in bomb shelters, the Canadian Embassy, our travel agent, they looked for ways to get us out, and they had a plan. And so we exited the motel, and they took us up. They said, we'll give you one glimpse of the old city. So we went up to the Mount of Olives. So we're on top of the Mount of Olives overlooking the old city. And so very vaguely you can see the old city wall over here. There's the Dome of the Rock. And so that's, well, there's the city wall right there. Yeah. And so the Dome of the Rock. So we had one picture. So momentarily for a couple minutes, they let us get out of the bus, off the bus, and take some pictures, and then they whisked us out of town. So our next 4 days of the tour should have been in the old city part, and it was unfortunate, but we got to see other things. So let's keep going. This is an ancient coin. We had a coin dealer come to the motel and offer and show us coins. This is a denarii. 1 day's wage in Jesus' time. Today it was selling for $2,000. And you could buy it. But it was dated back to the day of Jesus. Next. Okay, and we're on our way home. There's our bus. Next. And the Dead Sea. Let's keep going. And we have them mining the Dead Sea for minerals. And next, we'll have 2 more pictures there. There's salt, and one more, and different colors of minerals that they mine. The Dead Sea is, 1,300 feet below sea level. It has the Jordan River flowing into it year-round, and it's a body of water that keeps getting lower and lower. There's no water that runs out of it, but its level is going down. And then they mine the resources in it because it's so rich in minerals. So we got to see that. Next. And then I took a picture opposite the Dead Sea. This is, our guide pointed out, this was the cave where they found the Dead Sea Scrolls. And the Dead Sea Scrolls were found in, was it 1940-some, by some shepherds. And they were scrolls that contained the entirety of the Old Testament and proved that what they already had was accurate. Very reliable. So keep going. Okay, and then from there, we traveled, so the Dead Sea is here. So Jerusalem, down to Jericho, and then the Dead Sea. And we traveled to Eilat. And as we were at this point right here, just driving in the bus, just quickly the sirens went off that there was incoming missiles for that area. The bus stopped. We all had to pile off. And before we could get flat on the ground, we heard just opposite the bus, over a hill, we heard a big boom, and our guide said, "Look up," and all of a sudden overhead, we had a missile, or the Iron Dome missile, shoot right over us and intercept in the skies the incoming missiles. So that was probably the most visible we saw. But from there, we just climbed right back in, and we drove down to Eilat. And so this is Jordan. So the children of Israel would have walked, their 40 years in the desert were in here, this whole area. And so when they came up and conquered and crossed the Jordan right there. And so we actually drove that route they would have spent that time in. So next picture. So we arrived at Eilat, which is the tip of Israel to the south. And because of what we'd gone through, they treated us to a resort the last night. And so this is looking at our hotel room. And this is the Red Sea. It's the Gulf, the Gulf of Agaba. And it's one of the arms of the Red Sea where the children of Israel walked down. And so we actually went swimming in that. Next picture, some of us. And the salt content was high enough in here that I could simply put my legs up and float. And so it's pretty heavy. But next. So there we're getting ready to cross into Egypt. And our guide could not cross. She had to stay. She's a Jew. So she said goodbye, and she posed there with the children. Next. And welcome to Egypt. It's the border crossing. It took us a full 3 hours to cross with our group to get everything cleared. Okay. And then we drove, a few pictures as we drove through Egypt. A lot of new buildings. Next. We saw many of these. So this is what we saw for almost 10 hours driving through Egypt. This scene of sand and rock. And it's the peninsula that we drove through, and so very dry. And one more. This was at a service station that we stopped for some washroom break and food, and of course there's camels there too. And then, okay, so that's the end for me, and we're at 12 o'clock already. But Julius, you guys want to come up? And very long-winded I was.
Oh, that's good.
I don't know if you need this or not. I gave you the picture of the airstrip.
Sounds good. Can we just use this mic?
Pictures are you, Wyatt, and Tracy. Then you did another picture. And then yours. That order.
Sounds good. You have your nice. So, who all agrees that maybe Wayne should be a tour guide in Israel? Yeah, I do too. I can see him doing that. So this is a picture overlooking the Jezreel Valley, and Wayne said we were all supposed to pick a picture that really stood out to us. And when we were in Israel, it all kind of ran through and became a mush in my brain. But coming home and digesting everything, going through the pictures, I remembered lots of things that were said, and then I could separate it better. And so he said to pick one that meant the most to us. So this is a picture of the Jezreel Valley, and the one that he explained, I think that one was the one that meant the most to me. But this one as well, it's right from the same place. But if you look to the right there, that's the airstrip. Yeah, exactly there. And partially to the left as well, kind of in a V. And so the whole area is the airstrip. But the amazing thing is, we looked at this Army air base there, And we thought, well, surely all the fighter jets must be over Iran or somewhere because they weren't there. And all of a sudden we turned around, and then we heard, quickly looked back, there's a fighter jet taking off. So then we found out that all the planes are kept underneath. And so it's very interesting to see. All of a sudden you'd hear a rumble, and they were very active while we were there even, and that was before the war. But standing on Mount Carmel, I just wanted to explain the airstrip there, or the air base, the Army Air Base, because it's on the picture. But standing on Mount Carmel, now thinking back, what really hit me, I could picture Elijah there, because we were in roughly the place where Elijah would have offered alongside the Baal prophets. And then afterward, when he said to his servant, when he prayed, I think it's 1 Kings chapter 18, where it explains where he prayed, and then he sent his servant and said, go and look. And it totally makes sense, because Mount Carmel is actually very close to the Mediterranean Sea. And so where he would have offered, a little bit behind him, it was a higher point, but that's not where he would have offered. So his servant had to keep running up 7 times to see if there was a cloud. And so standing there, you could picture this. And then looking along the Jezreel Valley. And so this is what really stood out to me. And Wayne mentioned about Megiddo. So Armageddon, that word is derived from the word Megiddo. And so when that word is used in the Bible, Armageddon, it is the Hebrew word for it is Megiddo, which now they say Tel Megiddo. And just standing from Mount Carmel, you could see the plateau of Megiddo over there. And then it made sense why they would have based it there, because it kind of gave them a surrounding sight view of the area, of the whole Jezreel Valley. And further behind that was Mount Gilboa. That's where Saul and Jonathan were killed. And but Megiddo, I just want to touch in on that a little bit, because they found 26 different empires that had built there, one upon another, one after the other, as one succeeded the other. So 5,000 years, dating back to the flood, ever since then, empire upon empire. And just thinking, from Mount Carmel, we could also look over and see Nazareth. And Jesus would have walked all that, and he would have known one day the battle would be there again. Revelations 14, 16, and 19 explains that. And from Mount Carmel, then we went to Megiddo. And it just all fits together. So there's too much to really mention, so I'll just stop there. But this was kind of a highlight for me now looking back, because it puts a lot of puzzles in place as you stand on Mount Carmel. So this is Wyatt.
So I just want to tell you how the Israelites live their daily lives, and yeah. So our tour guide told us a lot about, well, maybe not a lot, but she told us that Israelites are never really, they're never fully resting. They're always a bit tense. And they even have an app on their phone that it has an emergency alert, and then you have 90 seconds to get to the bomb shelter and 10 minutes in the bomb shelter, and yeah. The one time there was even a bar mitzvah party going on upstairs, and then the alarm sounded, and they moved it downstairs, and they just continued it in the bomb shelter. I mean, it's just so obvious that God's protecting them.
Good job.
I would like to tell you a little bit about the Israeli soldiers that we met. Whether they're at the supper table eating supper or taking a walk on the street, they always have their weapons ready to protect, unless they're taking a shower. We met an off-duty soldier at supper one time at Bar Mitzvah. My dad asked me, "You want to get a picture with the soldier?" I did not want to miss the chance. So we got a picture with the soldier and got to talk a bit. I asked him, "Is that a fully automatic rifle?" He said yes. The Israeli soldiers are sociable, friendly, and never hesitate to protect their fellow citizens. But we know God is the one that protects them.
I just want to say that this lamp I got in Nazareth reminds me of the parable of the 10 virgins, and also that olive oil represents the Holy Spirit, and that it makes us shine before men. Thank you.
We were on a boat on the Sea of Galilee. It is a beautiful lake. We were told that the fishermen would often fish after dark. And many of the apostles would have fished right here on this lake. And they would bring their lanterns. The fish were drawn to the light, so they would come close to the boat so they could fish them. I found that very interesting. In the same way, we live in a dark world, but Jesus is the light of the world, and we are drawn to him, and he will lead and guide us.
Thank you. So that was some pictures that were important to us.
Never been here before.
Is there a picture going with this? Okay, yeah. You're probably wondering what this is. This is what they call the Jesus boat. It was discovered in 1986, actually. I found it really interesting how they was found by a few fishermen during a drought when the water was lower, but it was all covered in mud. How they got that out and put that up. And then when I was really thinking about it, what I was going to say about it, I'm like, there's so many things that Jesus probably taught and did while being on that boat. And one thing that really struck me, I guess, when we first got back, first time I met my grandchildren, I showed them some pictures. And there was a picture about the Sea of Galilee. And one of the twins, she's like, "Wait, the Sea of Galilee, that's where Jesus calmed the storm." So I figured I would put that on here, like just imagining Jesus being on that boat, crossing the Sea of Galilee, and then a storm hit. And how his disciples just came to him and they said, "Do you not care?" And then he just calmed the storm by saying, "Peace, be still," and it was still. And then I'm like, how often does he just wait for me to come to him and, "Do you not care?" And he's there for us. Just peace, be still. And it got calm. So it really, that thing doesn't look like much, but it has, I don't know if we will ever know if it's really the Jesus boat, but if we can still imagine it was. Oh, and also I was going to touch on this. Our guide told us, and also they had this picture up there, the boat was actually made out of 12 different types of wood, 12 for every disciple. And I found that really interesting, that how they built that. But that's all I'm going to say for now.
Okay, right on. That was an awesome trip, going there and meeting new people. And spending some time with the awesome Clausen family. 3 kids, well behaved. Man, it was so awesome. But anyway, I want to share a little bit just off by heart. I left my note at home. And there's a story in the Bible, which is, I think, in Matthew 14, chapter 14 to 21, that area. And there was over 5,000 people, or around 5,000 people gathered in the valley of Mount Beatitude, I think it's called. And it's just by the Sea of Galilee there. And here we are seeing the valley where the people gathered. And Jesus was preaching, and apparently he was preaching from the sea and then up into the valley there. And after he was done preaching, then they were talking about food, feeding the 5,000 people. And there was one boy, he had 2 fish and 5 loaves of bread. And Jesus prayed over it, and that was enough to feed all the people in there. And this is a story that I have heard from very young, and it stuck to me. And I was always amazed that Jesus was would have been so powerful to do this. And then later on, started reading the Bible myself, and always thought this was something that I would like to see, just that area of where it happened. And just standing on top of this mountain here, or hill, whatever you would call it, and just oversee this valley and kind of picturing, imagine 5,000 people. What about if there could have been 5,001, which would be me, and then I could have been there and just listen to it and see it all happen. It was an amazing, amazing place.
Okay, if you want to go one picture back, again, I just want to point out all that yellow that is on there, that's actually mustard seed. So if you read about mustard seed in the Bible, that's actually what it is. So anyway, my highlight, I don't have a picture for mine. Mine covers a little bit what Tyson and Wyatt did, just God's protection over Israel. It was just amazing to see. So before we left, we know there's a lot of uprisings in Iran. We're always up to date. Wayne, we all know Wayne has a huge interest in that. So we knew all about that. And as we were preparing, I was just praying, like, Lord, like, just knowing that there. But we had planned this trip, like, a long time ago. And so just praying, like, Lord, if we really shouldn't go, then stop this somehow. Like, then we don't want to go. And I remember there's quite a few on the group that said the same thing. They had prayed that way. And it just all fell into place, and we went. And so we just really feel like the Lord led us to go on this trip and to see this. Just 2 experiences, and just the peace that we had ahead of time praying through this. We had the peace that this is what God wanted us to do right now. So, and of course, we had a huge excitement about going. And then on the arrival, we flew in, and the bus was ready there for us to start our tour. We did a little bit of a tour the first day. Of course, we were all exhausted already from traveling, but we did a little bit of touring the first day. And right away, as we're leaving the airport, they already told us about sirens and the protocols of that. But I must say, like, we all, whatever, we felt peace, and the way they were talking, it's kind of, they can see the war ahead of time coming. They were kind of feeling it could come in a couple weeks, but they just had to warn us ahead of time that we had to be ready for the sirens. So, but a couple days later, Wyatt covered that a little bit when the sirens started. It was just amazing to see. There was calmness there wasn't chaos. Like, the people live with this. They had told us ahead of time what to do, and so we were on our way down to the bomb shelter. Nobody was panicking. Nobody was, it was just calm. It was peaceful. It was just, we felt protected. I mean, they have prepared us for this as well, but we felt protected for this as well. And just doing some of this, it really became reality. This is what the people live with all the time. Even when there's no war, they are always prepared. At the tone of the siren, they drop everything and are going down. And then just how the Iron Dome works, like we saw the first picture, how the missiles actually intercept, are they called missiles? The Iron Dome missiles, they intercept the missiles that come in. That is just amazing. Like, God has given this people the wisdom to come up with some of these protection that they have in their country. Yes, we know that some missiles have come down onto the land, but there have been very minimal compared to what came into the country. Very minimal. And so it is prophesied that the Lord will protect his people towards the end. They will be able to stand. And we saw this in person, and or a little bit, I should say. And I think that's the biggest for me. We read in prophecy, we know about it, we hear about it, but we saw it in action. And to me, we missed out on Jerusalem, which hopefully we get to go back and do someday. But this was actually an experience that I'm very thankful that we had. Like, we have it in our hearts, like just the importance of God's people and keeping them in our prayers and just what they go through, so.
Okay, we're almost at the end. 4 more pictures, and then we'll wrap up. So this is an olive press. It's stage 1 of a combine. It's going through the rotor or the cylinder, and it's crushing the olives in this and letting the juice run out the sides. And this has a very, very unique application. Next picture. There's stage 2. You can't see it well, but over here there's a plate, one at the bottom, one up here, and they would stack up little sacks of olives in between, like a bunch of them, and then they would lower this big beam, this lever, down, and to squish the olives. Next picture. And then these 3 rocks or cement pieces, they would winch up to put the weight hanging on here to put pressure over there. And they said each one of these could weigh up to a ton. Now, next picture. There's a picture on a photo of how that works, a very crude one. So there'd be the olive sacks full of olives to squish them out. Well, guess how long they were in the squeeze? 1 hour. And then they took them out, and they fluffed them up, put them back in, another hour. And then a third time. And then they were considered properly squeezed. And they had different levels of juice that came out. And we have a lesson very quickly in application. Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. The word Gethsemane means oil press. The word literally means an oil press. And I'm going to read a few verses in Matthew 26 to explain this. Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, which was full of olive trees and what had its press, Jesus was pressed. And in 26:34, 36, then Jesus came with them to a place called Gethsemane and said to the disciples, sit here while I go and pray over there. And he took with him Peter and 2 sons of Zebedee, and he began to be sorrowful and deeply distressed. And he said to them, my heart is exceedingly sorrowful, even to death. Stay here and watch with me. And he went a little further, fell on his face, and prayed, O my Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me. Not as I will, but as you will. And then he came to the disciples and found them sleeping and said to Peter, what? Could you not watch with me for 1 hour? How long were the olives in the press? And then Jesus went back and prayed again. An hour later came back and found them sleeping, and he went back a third time. Isn't that interesting? How God pictures the suffering of Christ in the olive press. And Jesus was pressed 3 times, and God tested him, and he prayed each time, not my will, but yours be done. And God prepared him for his purpose. And Luke records he was pressed to the point where he sweat drops of blood. The oil press. You know what? The next time we feel that God has put us in a press, remember the outcome, that God has a plan and a purpose where he wants to use us. And Jesus brought about salvation with what followed. But he had to go through the press. And often, that's me and you. But never, never to the degree that Jesus did. And so, I want to encourage us with that. That's such a real picture, and that stuck out the most to me, this picture. That in life, we often get pressed, but God has a plan beyond, and he wants to use us for his glory. So thank you for your patience and for allowing us to do this presentation. We'll have a closing song.